Good evening. On NDTV, we've been tracking what's happening to different sectors. What will be the new normal? Well, as all of us know, one of the big focus is going to be the travel industry. And joining me now is Deep Kalra, founder and group executive chairman of MakeMyTrip, India's leading online travel company, a pioneer in the field. In fact, Deep Kalra, it's now been 20 years. Have you ever, you've obviously never seen a situation like this. What would you say today in May 2020 about the future of travel this year?
Yes, Sonia, it's been 20 years and never seen something like this. So the oft-used term unprecedented is indeed in order. I think we're going to have a really, really difficult year and not just a couple of quarters for the entire travel and tourism industry in India. There are different facets of the industry. There is inbound travel, which is virtually dead, and I don't think will come alive anytime soon. There is outbound travel where people go internationally. We do a lot of that. I think also going to stay very muted because the reality is countries are not going to be very welcoming to passengers or to travelers from other countries for a long time to come. And then there's domestic travel where we have most of our hopes pinned. And then another way to slice the pie is corporate and leisure. So while corporate travel comes back, business travel will come back because it's necessity based, but it's going to stay muted. I think in the long run, it'll be fair to say that a lot of business travel will now be done virtually. Meetings will be done virtually, as the one thing we have all learned during lockdown is that a lot of work can be done while sitting at home and using tools like this. However, leisure travel, I believe, stays very muted till the time we have a vaccine. And then everything changes. I believe public memory is short. It'll be back with a bang. In fact, people are dying to get out of their homes. People are dying to holiday. I hear this all the time. So I think we have to brace ourselves for a few very difficult quarters. And finally, the industry will start limping back. But it all depends on when the vaccine comes.
So what, Deep Kalra, it's not just your industry, but I think across the world and India, we have to define a new normal post-corona. And that will, of course, be in phases. Till a vaccine is developed, we still don't know how many months that is, but it will be phases. As one of the leading voices in this field, what do you think should be travel and tourism's new normal? What do all of you need to do to get people to travel safely once this phase-wise lockdown is actually lifted in a meaningful way?
Yeah, absolutely right. I think till the time that, this much promised and much waited for vaccine comes, we obviously have to look at travel opening up for various reasons. I think some of it is need-based, some of it is something you really want to do, which is leisure travel. But people need to get out, and people need to get out and travel responsibly. I think all service providers, starting from the big suppliers, whether it's airlines, whether it's the trains or the bus operators, and then hotels as well as homestays, all have to play a very important role in making sure that the stay is secure. We as intermediaries, online travel agents, and even offline travel agents, I think have to make sure that we actually highlight and promote the suppliers who are doing a good job of making sure that their properties and the entire passage, the entire, I would say the cycle for the passenger from starting the journey till the end, all steps of it have to be secure, sanitized. There need to be protocols for every step. And happy to share that I think the government's being very proactive. We are working very closely with the Ministry of Civil Aviation for airports. Protocols are being set up for airlines. I think the airlines are doing a lot, waiting in anticipation when they can start flying. And then we're working very closely with our hotel partners, who some of them are setting very high standards for maintaining hygiene standards, for making sure that people feel safe and secure right from the time they walk through the door. So I think you're going to see a sea change.
What are the timelines you would like to see, Deep, in a sense that we are actually chasing this virus? We don't know how this virus works yet completely, but what are the timelines that you would actually like to see for the travel industry and tourism industry?
I think, Sonia, we've been locked down long enough. I'm all for being safe and secure. And I think the whole idea of the lockdown and implementing it early, and full credit and kudos to the government for implementing it early, has been now in force for a while. I think it's time to start relaxing it gradually. In fact, this extension of lockdown, in my mind, should have been termed as actually an experiment to lift the lockdown, which is what it is, I think, in some parts. And as part of that, travel and tourism plays a very big role. Travel for sure needs to get opened up. And I think it needs to get opened up with all the protocols of safety. I think there needs to be social distancing in the way we travel. So obviously, we're not going to have 100% coming back, even on its own. So the natural demand or the inherent demand isn't going to be 100%. The natural demand might well be just 20, 25% today. So you anyway have the luxury of giving all the social distancing norms that are required for these passengers to get to where they need to go to.
Right.
The evacuation flights that the government is running right now through Air India is a great example of how we're going to handle it. And hopefully it'll go very well. Hopefully we'll do all the right things. It's an example to be set, and then for the rest of the industry to follow. I think domestic traveling between trunk routes is important, as is going to far-flung parts of the country. A lot of people are displaced. They need to get to where they are. A lot of people now need to travel for work. I think we have to help that, and we have to start opening up.
In fact, Mr. Kalra, if you just looked at that aspect also as a driver of the GDP, the point you're making that perhaps that this is looking at how to exit the lockdown in a sensible, safe way. But when we look, for instance, at the driver of the GDP, we know travel and tourism contributes a significant part of India's GDP and the impact on jobs. In that sense, when you're balancing the whole delicate balance between lives and livelihood, how important is it for lives for us to actually open this up in a significant way?
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that point, Sonia. So it's true that almost 9% of our GDP and close to 10% of our workforce is in the travel and tourism sector. That's a lot of people. And we are talking about a potential job loss. It's a CII study which was done about a month ago, shared with the government. We all participated in it. A potential job loss of 5 crore jobs. That's a lot of people who can get displaced. And most of these people are not going to find jobs in other industries. They've been doing this kind of work for a decade, 2 decades, even 3 decades, and they don't have the skills required for other industries who might be hiring sooner. So I think it's critical that we take care of these people. The kind of total loss in terms of dollar value or rupee value to the industry could go up to 5 lakh crores, which can be completely devastating. So as a very significant contributor to the overall GDP, I think we have to ensure that the industry gets up and running soon with all the precautions, responsible travel. And I think travelers are as responsible as service providers out here. Right. The ecosystem will have to come together and actually be up to the challenge.
You've made that point on the lockdown, being an early lockdown, and in that sense really helped slow down our growth rate of cases, though of course cases are still rising, and these are cases which happened during the lockdown. So with the opening up, you're likely to see more cases as well. Is that something that worries you? Do you think that when as every day more cases are reported, this is actually going to be a deterrent for industry to get back on track?
Hey, clearly everyone is worried sick about the fact that more and more cases are being reported, but this has happened everywhere. It is going to happen here. If India believes that we're going to be at this level post-lockdown, then I think we're fooling ourselves. During lockdown, these were the levels. It is going to come up, but have we built enough capacity during this time? Hopefully, yes, so that we can take care of people who get sick. Have we managed to produce enough PPEs? Apparently, we become the second largest producer of PPEs fairly quickly. That's great to hear. Have we provided for enough ventilators and enough isolation wards? Hopefully, yes. So I think if all of these measures have been taken, we have to balance opening up of the economy now with the fact as we go about trying to manage the virus as best as we can.
You talked also about cooperation of the government, that you've been in touch with the Civil Aviation Minister and other ministers. But the question that many in industry are asking is about a stimulus package. And in that sense, it can vary whether with some industries asking for a wage guarantee, as it were, for different sectors or different MSMEs, perhaps. In your companies and many others, there have been worries about this. I know you've taken 100% pay cut, so have other senior management. But that's a real issue. How do companies hold on to people, pay their salaries when they're actually not earning any revenue? What would you like the government to do in terms of whether it's a stimulus package or whether it's a kind of a pay guarantee package? Because other countries around the world have already declared theirs. India still hasn't.
Yeah, and I think we're all waiting on it. I think we're all very, very keen to hear what the stimulus package is going to be for all industries and obviously for travel and tourism. the request that's been made for our industry is actually to take care of people who are right at the bottom of the pyramid, which is, I think, where it's fair. So we're talking about people who take back less than 30,000 rupees per month. And these are people who obviously have very little savings. And if they're without a job today, it becomes very difficult for the industry, for the family. So I think it's really important that we take care, and there's a scheme which has been put together and hopefully will be implemented. But I do know that the government's thinking along the lines how they can help these people. And probably it can be done in a tripartite manner, which is some part of the burden is taken by the company, some part by the individual, and some part by the government, which will definitely ensure and help that these people stay employed. So I think that's a very critical ask. The other big ask that we are, as an industry, we've taken forward is not necessarily to get money today. We also understand there's a limited amount of funds. The corpus is not unlimited. So perhaps a rebate package, a tax rebate for the next couple of years on domestic travel, because that is what would be needed to give the stimulus to this industry to come back very fast. I think that's something which might be considered, and we are again very hopeful we'll get something out there. Naturally, the industry has asked for a tax holiday, not just for 6 months, but probably for a whole year. And this is at all levels. So there's a TDS element, there's a GST element, and for online players, there's even a TCS element. So I think all of these are much anticipated, and we can only hope that we will be getting something from the government soon.
Oh, no, of course, one aspect has been also Deep Kalra in the middle, that you were, of course, the first online travel big boys in a sense, the giants in this. But you and your team have also worked on the Aarogya Setu app, and that's now in the middle of controversy. Why do you feel this app is necessary, and how do you answer charges even by the Congress that this is about surveillance and there's a security issue as China is involved?
Well, we're fortunate as a company that we got the opportunity to get involved to build something special. It is a public-private partnership, and we are one part of it. We definitely are closely involved. I do believe that most of the privacy issues are overstated. I think there's a real crisis at hand. As we all know, people are dying, and it can't get worse than that, and they're dying by the thousands now. And if there's technology or an app that can help, bring that number lower by any extent, even by a few lives every day, I think it's well worth it. And that's what this app does by a very, very smart, sophisticated, and simple process of tracking. And this is called tracing. And this is done by both Bluetooth and GPS data. And I think, people have to get into this to understand that you're not really giving up anything. You can delete the app whenever you want, or once the crisis is over. And all data is purged in 30 days. And the only data that is used is of people who are either infected and who are already positive, and those people who come close to them. And that's handled very carefully by the government and by the Ministry of Health. So I think it's a big fuss. But this is typical of our country, any democracy. So I think that goes with it. But happy to share that 90 million people are using the app on a daily basis, and it's only growing.
So the data is absolutely safe, and you're saying importantly that after 30 days the data is purged, so there's no security issue here.
Absolutely.
So even though you've seen all the international controversy about an ethical hacker saying I can track this, how do you answer that?
Yeah, and I think the answer has been put out by the government of India. I think those claims have been overstated. The answer has been already put out. It's there officially on the website. And I think what has been called out as a big flaw is not a flaw of any sort. There's this very simple technical process which someone is claiming can be done, but that's not indeed the case. So,
coming back to our big focus on really, in a sense, a vaccine or a booster needed for the travel sector as well, the travel and tourism sector. Where were you all heading in the months before this happened? In that sense, when this virus first reported in China, did you have any sense or indicator of how big this would actually blow up when you were talking to counterparts across the world or hearing that this was a huge issue? And then now when you're looking at the latter half of 2020, where do you think you've gone from, say, if you were expecting a certain profit or revenues in travel in January 2020, where do you think it's actually going to be in December 2020?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that we were all caught blindsided. I think despite the fact that the virus was playing havoc in China since January of this year, most people felt it's contained in that part of the world, China, Hong Kong. It had gone to other parts of Asia. And I think most of us felt it's like SARS, it's going to be very localized. I think the wake-up call really happened when mainland Europe was hit with this and Italy was hit very badly, and everyone just suddenly realized, hey, this is not an Asian thing. It's not Asia and Iran. It's actually anywhere in the world where this can spread, and it can really, really cause a huge problem. So I think at that point of time, we started taking it seriously. I can share with you, being a public company, we reported a tremendous quarter. The last quarter we reported was OND, October, November, December, revenues in excess of $160–170 million for the quarter, not gross booking, just revenues. And, while January, February, March will still be good, and we're reporting only in a couple of weeks' time, so I can't share that. But the current quarter we are in, which is April, May, and June, is going to be abysmal. And right now, for the last 45 days, there's been zero travel. There are a few hotel bookings which are going on for dire need, medical purposes, self-isolation, a few hundred bookings a day, and that's about it. So I think it's going to be a blank quarter. And then the next quarter after that, we hopefully believe we'll start limping back. Might get something in June. But for our budgeting exercises, we are looking at the worst case scenario of there being nothing much actually in this quarter or the next.
Right. And if that's happening with you, we can imagine the ripple effect for smaller operators across India as well. But just to ask, one opportunity perhaps, Deep, has been that when we've looked at the new world in this lockdown, we've looked at the environment, how that's recovered. Travel and tourism has to change. We can't be in the kind of same mode that we were actually earlier. Then when we talk about the new normal, it's not just about safety and security, but also about looking at the environment around us.
Absolutely. I think, Sonia, you're very right. I think we've all learned that. I think we're going to be looking far more closely at our carbon footprint that we make every time we make a trip. We as a company actually have been pushing that for a while now, for almost 6–7 years. We've been asking people and requesting people when they make a booking, we tell them how much their carbon footprint is, and if they want to offset some part of that by donating a small amount which goes towards trees plantation. Over 1.1 million trees have been planted with customer and company money so far. So I think it's going to be much more about responsible travel. This was just a buzzword till now, and now it's going to be something people take very seriously, which means people will be more focused about what they do when they travel, how they really enjoy their travels and where they are, rather than just literally going from one place to another, hopping, spending just a couple of days in one place and taking another flight, jetting away. So I think a lot of that is going to change. We are going to value our freedom a lot more. I think the reality is it's hit us very hard that we can be made to stay indoors overnight. And everyone, like I said, at least I know, is just dying to get out and to be out in the open again. And most of them are saying, hey, listen, we just want to be in a very serene place. We are enjoying the serenity, but obviously we want to be out of our house, whether it's the sea or it's the mountains. We'd love to spend some time out there. So I think that might be the one positive which emerges from this, which is how we actually ensure that we are more responsible as we are travelers. Absolutely.
Final thoughts tonight, Mr. Kalra, that what are the three big lessons that you and the travel industry have learned? What would you like to tell our viewers today and the government as well? What are the three big things that have come out of this pandemic for you?
Yeah, I think the many stakeholders in the ecosystem, and the first one is the government. I'd just like to reiterate that we are, as an industry, desperately in need. I think there is real danger of many players not surviving. And it's not just small companies, it'll also be large companies. The aviation sector is very badly hit. They have very high fixed costs, and I think that they need help, as does the hospitality sector. So I think the government needs to look at that very carefully. As we open up, and I'm very focused on opening up, I think we've all got to get together and set a common safety standard. This has got to be a safety standard and a protocol which cuts across. So we don't breach it at any part, because the weakest link is going to be that part which gets breached. So if you're making a trip from point A to point B, and I believe driving holidays will come back the fastest. So people stay in their own cars or in a car they're safe in, they feel secure in, and they drive to a remote place and they stay in a resort or in a homestay. But you've got to be safe and secure and sanitized at all points of the passage. Otherwise that chain breaks. So I think this, even customers have to realize, and even travelers have to realize that there's responsibility back on them. And thirdly, I think people have to stay optimistic. So we, for one, definitely believe at our company that travel will come back. It'll come back with a bang. We've seen that happen in China. We have close partners there in C-Trip, and it's coming back pretty strongly. And I think in all parts of the world, travel's one thing you can't keep away. We are wired to travel as human beings, so we will travel once we can. And I think we have to stay optimistic about that and believe that this is going to come back and going to be fantastic again.
Absolutely. Deep Kalra, thanks so much for joining me. I think this crisis has made us realize even more how much we are all dependent on each other, how the entire ecosystem needs to work. Let's see what the new normal will be like. Thank you very much for joining us on NDTV. Thank you.
Thank you.